As Pope Leo XIV navigates the early days of his pontificate, a leading Catholic voice encourages the faithful to take on what he says is the Pope's mission of love. In his popular weekly How to Build a Life column for The Atlantic, social scientist Arthur Brooks writes, as the new Pope charges Catholics to be service missionaries representing a missionary church, then the question is this: what pressing need do we face? Leo named it himself at his inaugural Mass. Brothers and sisters, this is the hour for love. To bind up the wounds in our families, nations, and church is the mission we need today, a mission of true love for a suffering world. But how can a church that's often divided bring about this so-called mission of love to a world in desperate need of it? For that answer and more, we go on the record with the acclaimed author of this piece, one of the most thoughtful voices on what it means to live a good life. And joining us now is Arthur Brooks, columnist for The Atlantic, Harvard professor, and author of the upcoming book, The Happiness Files: Insights on Work and Life. Thank you so much for being here.
Delighted to be with you. Thank you.
It's been just over 1 month now since Pope Leo XIV has been elected.
Amazing.
And you say his mission is a mission of love. What do you mean by that?
Well, we're a missionary church. He reminded us of that in his inaugural, when he came out and introduced himself to the world. His remarks were, we're missionaries with a missionary church. And this is a guy with credibility about this. He was a missionary in Peru for a good deal of his career. He truly is a missionary. And he was reminding all of us as Catholics that we're not supposed to sit there and on our couches. We're supposed to get out in the world. We're a worldly church out there in it, is his whole point. The question then becomes, what kind of missionaries? We're not generally door knockers. Catholics are not coming on. I mean, we're the ones behind the curtain going, pretend we're not home.
Yeah,
I'm
guilty.
Well, for sure. But the point is that Catholic missionaries traditionally have been the ones who bring medicine to those who are in need, education for the uneducated, food to the hungry. We are service missionaries. That's the tradition of the Roman Catholic Church, is service missionaries to people who need it. So the question for Pope Leo is, what is the service that the world needs that we can actually serve with our missionary work?
And I want to delve more into that service and that mission. But first, as a social scientist, set the landscape for us.
Yeah.
How is our society doing today? How are us human beings doing in 2025?
Well, we're a fallen lot, of course. And, the truth is that at any given time, you'll find that people think that there's a lot of unhappiness, because there is. I mean, life on earth is a tricky business, to be sure. And we have a challenge to live our best lives and lift other people up and bring them together in bonds of happiness and love. This is the service that we actually have as Christian people. But it looks particularly bad right now. I, as a social scientist, I look at the happiness data going back 30 years, and it's been dropping. It's been dropping pretty gradually almost every year. And then these big storms, the storms of polarization, the storm of screen time with social media, which is horrible for happiness. And then, of course, there was COVID, which led to all kinds of loneliness. So the truth of the matter is that I, as a social scientist, don't like what I'm seeing. But once again, I'm a service missionary. And so my job, not just as a social scientist, more importantly as a Catholic, is to see that as an opportunity to lift people up more and show them not just what they think they want, which is happiness, but what they need, which is the cross and gospel of Jesus Christ.
Well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of those practicals of carrying out this mission of love. Some people might equate loving others by showing empathy to others.
Right.
What's your response?
That's not correct. I mean, empathy it's a nice emotion. It's kind of a nice thing. And what that really means is feeling the pain of other people.
Right.
There's an old saying that parents often have. You're a new parent, and you say, and you'll see when your children are of the age where they're having strong emotions, you'll say, you're never happier than your unhappiest child. But that's actually really bad parenting, because nobody wants to have an unhappy parent. Nobody wants to be married to an unhappy person or work for an unhappy person. If we're going to be really good service missionaries in a world lifting people up, we need to work on our own happiness, is the whole point. And so empathy, of feeling the pain of other people, tends to be pretty ineffective. To be a parent of teenagers empathetically or excessively empathetically, or being a boss, that's not the way to do it.
Then what's the healthy approach?
The healthy approach is something that people often mistake for empathy: compassion. Compassion is to understand the source of somebody's pain, to really understand it, and then do what needs to be done, even when it's unpopular. I found this as a parent. My kids are growing up now. I have grandkids, but when I had 3 teenagers at once at one point. It was pretty rough.
God bless you.
Yeah. And I remember, thinking, I feel their pain, but I can't be paralyzed by it. I have to do what needs to be done, and they're not going to like it. And saying, sorry, I know you don't like it, but I'm not trying to be your friend here. I'm trying to be your dad. That's the compassionate thing to do, and that's what the church needs, is to be compassionate, not just empathetic, because there's right and wrong in the world. We need to call out what's wrong with love, which is an act of compassion, but we have to do it right.
Yeah. Well, in your piece in The Atlantic, you write, true compassion
Right.
means speaking forthrightly about faith and morality, and that's where things get even harder. Imparting a difficult truth, as you understand it, to someone when you have no love for them is not hard. Doing it with love is the challenge.
Right.
That point, Arthur, especially resonated with me. I think it's hard for me to speak difficult truths, and here we are in Washington, D.C., a city
Right.
that frankly runs on division. You spoke about the social science. Gallup says there's a record high of 80% of U.S. adults say Americans are greatly divided on most important values.
Right.
But you are saying it is possible
Yeah.
to thread the needle of correcting someone with love.
Yeah, it is, and the truth of the matter is that you have a moral obligation to call out things that are wrong when they're wrong, for the good of the person. By the way, I mean we're concerning ourselves with the salvation of souls, and when there's grave sin, we have to call it out. But we will be ineffective in doing so if we don't do that with love. This is what Jesus was talking about in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5:44. You've heard that you should love your friends and hate your enemies. But the new teaching is love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. That's not just the right thing to do, the moral thing to do, the noble thing to do. That's the practical thing to do. If you want somebody to change, and somebody is doing something that's at odds with what you believe, hating them, being contemptuous of them, insulting them, doesn't work. It makes things worse. You've never hated anybody into agreement ever.
And yet I think there are some people who think, well, if you're not being direct enough, which
Right.
might mean you need to be brash, if you're not doing that, then you might be watering down the truth. Can you speak to that? Can you speak the truth in a way with love that doesn't compromise the truth?
Absolutely. I mean, and Jesus did that all the time. And Jesus was the master of doing that. You don't think that he brought the money changers into and dined with them and said, it's fine to be a money changer. He didn't, or I'm getting the parable. I'm actually getting the story wrong. Actually, it was the tax collectors and prostitutes. He wouldn't say, good for you, go and do that.
Yeah.
But he was showing them love, because when you show them love, when you love the people with whom you disagree, and then you talk about the disagreements, then you're able to persuade people potentially. It's your only shot at persuading people is with love, not with hate.
1 month in, do you see Pope Leo so far threading this needle?
Oh, it looks so good. I'm so encouraged. I have so much hope and so much optimism about Pope Leo. I mean, his whole approach up to this point, and what do we know about him? We know about him what he's written and he said when he was the head of the Augustinian Fathers, is just unbelievably loving and nurturing and wise. And at the same time, he's a canon lawyer, so he wasn't watering down anything.
Right.
This is not a guy who's cutting corners and telling people that it's perfectly okay. On the contrary, what he does is in his career, he's spoken truth in a spirit of love, and that's a lot more what we all need to emulate as Catholic people.
Speaking more of living in that tension of standing up for truth, but doing so with love. I mean, you have a best-selling book that you co-wrote with Oprah Winfrey. You work closely with the Dalai Lama, two very famous, influential people who don't share our Catholic faith. Can you speak about what it's been like to collaborate with well-known people on this mission of truth that you're on, with people who don't share our faith?
It's the best thing ever. And the reason it's an incredible opportunity is because I'm a Catholic in that space. Look, this is the mission field that we're in all the time. We should look for places where people don't share our faith. It's good. Like, I get it. Turn on EWTN every day. I do. We all should, because we need our community, to be sure.
Right.
Go to Mass on Sunday. They're all Catholics in there. It's great. Go to your Bible study. This is really important, but you got to be out in the world, and you got to go to the places where you say things people don't expect in a spirit of love. And what are you? At that point, you are the most loving Catholic they've ever met, and that the opportunity to work with somebody as wonderful and as well known as Oprah Winfrey gave me a platform out in the world that I never would have gotten otherwise. And she was so loving and so wonderful to work with, and allowed that. And she wanted me to have that platform, to be sure. But that's what we need to look for. We can't stay insulated. We can't afford it in this world. There's 1.4 billion of us. But there's 8 billion people out there. And we all know, every single person watching EWTN right now knows what the world needs. And it's up to us.
You wrote in your recent Atlantic article, as a lay Catholic myself, I consider my secular writing, speaking, and teaching to be the principal way that I share my faith publicly. And it's true. I mean, I think I saw you on every major news network promoting your book. Do you mind sharing more about how you view your work when it pertains to sharing the faith?
Sharing the faith, for sure. So I'm a scientist by background. I teach secular social science. I teach classes in the science of happiness at Harvard University. I'm not up there proselytizing. I'm not up there getting, saying there's a brochure under all of your seats. This is not what I'm doing. But my approach is basically to be open and easy and natural about my Catholic faith. So I say on the first day of class, in my class at Harvard, I'm a Roman Catholic, and it is literally the most important thing in my life, truth in advertising. And then I do my work. So here's the thing. The two best tools in secular evangelization, of mission work out in the field, number one is friendship, and number two is excellence. Be a good friend, be a good person, all the time, impeccable in the way that you treat other people, and somebody that people can rely on and actually love. And two, be excellent at everything you do. Be the best at what you do, absolutely, because people want to be around excellence, and people want to have good friends. So you don't have to be looking for excuses to talk about it. On the contrary, have people say, she's really good at what she does, and she's a Catholic. Maybe it's not a coincidence.
People are drawn to that.
You want to magnetize your faith by making it natural and normal and excellent. That's what you want. Magnetism, so that you can draw people as opposed to chasing them down the block. That's not usually the best approach to mission work.
I think I read that you have missionaries on both sides of your family. Is that true? And do you consider yourself a missionary?
I do. I do consider myself a secular missionary. Now, I had real door-knocking missionaries back in the past because I come from an evangelical Christian background. I converted when I was 16 after a mystical experience at the Shrine of Guadalupe in Mexico. So I have a real reverence for Our Lady, especially Our Lady of Guadalupe. But I was raised in the evangelical tradition, and there were Lutheran missionaries on one side, and there were Methodist missionaries on the other. So my father was born in the Navajo Nation in New Mexico, because his father was the head of a missionary school in the Navajo Nation. And my mother's family, they were missionaries to the Zulus in South Africa at the time of the birth of my grandfather, actually. So my mother didn't see that, but they have this strong missionary tradition, and it's sort of. For me, it's an epigenetic expression, but as a scientist, I have this way to do it, and I have this uniquely Catholic way to do it. We're out there, we're in the world, we're doing our work. And we want people to see that there's an equanimity, there's a peace, there's a perspective, there's a love that we actually bring to our work. And we want people to want that.
Well, speaking of the mission fields, and you write about Pope Leo's mission of love, of unity, of peace. For Catholics today, do you think the greater need is to bridge the gap between us and non-Catholics, or right now, is there a greater need to bridge the gap within our own church?
There's, of course, both, and we can do both, to be sure, but the truth is we're not going to bridge the gap to bring people along who are not in the church at all if we can't bridge the gap between each other. There's nothing that's more off-putting than seeing a family that's fractured. You don't want to join a fractured family. It doesn't look attractive. It doesn't look fun. It doesn't draw you in with love. And so this is something I think Pope Leo can and will do. There's been hard times over the past 10 or 20 years of Catholics on the so-called right and left not understanding each other. And the truth is we have so much more in common than differences that focusing on what we have in common makes it possible for us to examine our differences in a spirit of love. Now, think about this. I mean, everybody watching us, and I know it's easy to get really exercised and upset about this. I got strong opinions too. But think everybody can answer the question themselves in their heads. Do you love somebody with whom you disagree politically? Every hand goes up. Every hand goes up. And the real shame is when the political differences lead to schism, and we can't afford it as Catholics today. We can't afford disunity today. It's too expensive. It's not right. And so concentrating on what we have in common, which is a love for our Lord and Savior, our love for the people in this world that actually need what we have to offer, and then adjudicating differences in that spirit of love is going to make us more attractive to the world.
Is that what you would say is your call to action to every Catholic right now, for us to carry on, again, what you call Pope Leo's mission of love?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's we're made in God's image. We know, and that's from the Old Testament, of course. In Genesis 1, in the New Testament, we learn what that means. God is love. We learn from St. Thomas Aquinas that to love is to will the good of the other. That's our mission in the world. You want to be made in God. You want to be truly acting in a way where you know you're made in God's image. Go will the good of the other as other. This is what we're called to do, and there's no greater joy than we can actually live as Catholics today.
The Catholic Church is this massive institution. I wonder, as a social scientist, what you think of if every Catholic really took seriously this mission of love. How might that impact society?
It's a new day. It's a new day. There's so many of us, right? I mean, we have strength in numbers. And by the way, we have a system that it makes it, in a weird way, convenient for people to be Catholic. I talk to people all the time. They say, I grew up going to church, but it's kind of hard to find what I'm looking for. It's like, we're like Starbucks. We're every place. We have a very uniform and very beautiful and very, very good product. I don't mean to talk about it that way, but you get the point that we've got something that everybody can avail themselves of. We just got to make it as beautiful and attractive as possible, and that starts at home.
Do you think there could be a revival here in the U.S.?
Oh, I think there's coming. I think it's coming. I mean, when you find this kind of division, when you find this kind of polarization, almost inevitably we're going into a period of greater spiritual enlightenment. This is coming. The question is, what's the role that the Catholic Church is going to play in the spiritual renewal? And that requires serious missionary work on all of our parts right now. And so we need to ask ourselves tomorrow as we go out, am I being a good missionary or am I not? Is somebody going to say, I like the way that person lives their Catholic faith or not? Is that attractive or is that unattractive? Those are the choices.
You already mentioned that you converted to Catholicism as a teenager, 16, I believe. Do you mind sharing, who were the kind of Catholics, what kind of witness were they giving that helped lead you even more deeply into this conversion journey?
Yeah, well, I didn't know any Catholics. It was weird. I mean, I was on a music trip. I was a real serious musician when I was a teenager and in my 20s, and I was on a music trip to Mexico City, and I was in the Shrine of Guadalupe, and I was looking at the Tilma of Juan Diego, and the old basilica was on the right side of the left side of the altar, and I was looking at it and thinking, is she looking at me? And I couldn't get it out of my head. And I went up to, there was a church in my neighborhood, and I begged my parents, and they thought it was, hey, he wants to be Catholic. I guess it's better than drugs. So as teenage rebellion goes, I was
not
called,
bad.
but of course not bad. And I went, and I was not drawn in by individuals. I really think it was almost a supernatural experience. Now, later on, I was nurtured by other people.
Okay.
Most notably, I married a girl that was raised in a largely secular family in Barcelona. In Spain, people are culturally Catholic. She had never attended Mass in her whole life.
Wow.
When we married in Spain and moved to the States, and that's where she really, really met the faith. And when she did, boy, she fell in a big way, and that was so good for our family and so good for me. And now she's my guru. She's my Catholic guru.
That's really beautiful. We talked about happiness. U.S. depression rates have reached a record high. As a social scientist and as a Catholic, this is a huge question and with a complex answer, I'm sure. But why do you think that is big picture, and is there a spiritual component?
Spiritual component to the depression and anxiety epidemic that we see, for sure. I mean, the depression and anxiety epidemics that we see are contemporaneous with the rise of, as Bishop Barron calls them, the nuns, not as in Mother Angelica nuns.
Right.
N-O-N-E-S, those who profess to have no faith or even spirituality for that matter. And that's been rising and rising. The year I was born in the mid-1960s, it was 1% of the population. Now it's 33% of the population. And it's a majority in some demographics is what we see. Now that's starting to turn around just in the last couple of years. It's gone down to the bottom and starting to dip back up, especially for men in their 20s. Guys in their 20s. We've never seen anything like this where guys are kind of leading the way back in. And I guess when things get bad enough, right, is the way that works. And so now we actually see young men more likely to profess practicing a faith than young women. But that's usually actually the pattern that we see before a spiritual revival.
Wow, that's fascinating just from that perspective and that
Yeah,
vantage
and the
point.
depression actually does follow being none. As a social scientist, I can tell you that being none is a good predictor of suffering from depression and anxiety.
Many people know you from your work speaking on happiness. You are this happiness expert. Why is it good for people of faith to seek happiness? It's not superficial.
Yeah,
is
it's
it?
not superficial at all. On the contrary, I mean, the Beatitudes are about happy people, is what it comes down. The real question is, what is happiness, is what it means. And there's a tendency in our feelings culture to say, feeling happy all the time. Well, that's not it. That's actually not happiness. Happiness is a combination, has nothing to do with feelings. Feelings are associated with happiness as evidence of happiness, occasionally. But real happiness is a combination of enjoying your life, which we really believe as Catholics you should do because it's a gift, of taking satisfaction with your activities and accomplishments so you can be an admirable person. And most importantly, to find the meaning of your life. And finding the meaning of your life has a lot of suffering involved in it. So we're not afraid of suffering because if you don't suffer, you won't be happy. You have to be fully alive, right? I mean, St. Irenaeus said the glory of God is a person fully alive. Well, guess what? A person fully alive is a really happy person who suffers a lot as well. And that's what we need to understand.
And that's the witness of the saints when you look at
Absolutely.
them, too. Finally, what have you seen so far in the pontificate of Pope Leo XIV that you think we all should emulate so we can carry forward?
That's a good question because it's so new
Yeah.
at this particular point. But what I really love is the fact that he is somebody who dedicated himself to taking the faith to the people at the margins of society who actually needed it the most. He never intended to be a bishop, let alone a cardinal and then the Holy Father. I mean, he was selected in this weird serendipitous way. He dedicated his life to being a place where people are forgotten. Going to these particular places and getting little, being small. He's somebody who's been minor over in his entire life. And that's a beautiful thing, isn't it? Is not to puff ourselves up, not to become the most important person in the room, not to be political and actually elbowing other people out of the way. And he was selected, he was elevated on the basis of the fact that he is somebody who, in being small, was identified as somebody who should be emblematic for what we all want to be.
That's a great way to put it and a great reminder for us all. Arthur Brooks, thank you so much.
Thank you.